By the way, I just wanted to ask you guys if the speed of the lecture so far has been, including in the last 2 weeks, too slow or too fast or appropriate. Let me take a poll. Option A is too slow, and option B is too fast, and the others are appropriate. Option A is too fast, and option B is too slow. Other is appropriate. Okay. Seems like dominantly it's appropriate, so I'll just keep on with this speed. All right, thank you. Oh, it's 100%. That's great. All right, so let's restart. Then the second thing is second question is what is the role of the cerebellum for consciousness? So cerebellum is a part of the brain that sits in the back of the head here. This looks slightly different, and the humans have eyes here. So if you touch your brain like here, it's around the part of the cerebellum. And in the case of the elephant, it's really gigantic. This red part is the human cerebellum. And one of the most important information that you get from this entire lecture is that the cerebellum accounts in terms of number of the neurons. It's about 80% of the human neurons. Okay, so this is quite a significant number, and you need to be aware of that. And I may ask it in the questions, e-assessment. Okay. So, and also this is another important number, 86 billions of neurons in the entire human brain, 70 billions are in the cerebellum. So if the number of the neurons matter for consciousness, then cerebellum should be really critical for our conscious experience, as you can imagine. And many small animals have much fewer numbers of neurons in their entire brains, and but it's proportional to the brain. Cerebellum is like here, it's always smaller in terms of the volume, but the number of the neurons are evolutionarily pretty much conserved, roughly 70% to 80% of the entire number of the neurons. And in the last week of the lecture, I also said that this is another important kind of figures to remember. Human brain is roughly 10 centimeter, like it's a bit bigger than 10 centimeter, but the 10 centimeter, and then 20 centimeter across, the brain. So that's the rough size of the brain. And it weighs 1.5 kilo or 1 kilo, depending on the people. And the mouse or rat has roughly 1,000 times smaller. So it's about 1 gram. And also the number of the neurons is roughly 1,000 less. 10 to the minus 3 in terms of numbers. So, okay, human has roughly 10 to the 11 neurons, and the mouse or rat has 10 to the 8 neurons. Roughly, 1,000 times different. And in terms of also volume or weight, it's also the case. And the proportion of the cerebellum is the same, more or less. So now coming back to the cerebellum and the consciousness. This is a very striking kind of a report, which has been reported several times in the history, and it seems it's highly repeatable. This cases of a complete cerebellar agenesis seems to be missed in terms of the loss of consciousness. I mean, they don't have any, effects in terms of consciousness. So this particular person reported in this paper was a 24 years old female, and she was admitted to the hospital because of the dizziness and the inability to walk, and then nausea and vomit for 1 month. And but she was already married, and she had a daughter, and she was also pregnant at the time. Pregnancy and delivery were described as uneventful for that particular child. And then 4 years old before she could stand unassisted, meaning that, after she was born in a really young age, she couldn't stand, so she had a trouble in terms of balance and so on. And also walking without assistance was difficult until the age of 7. But that deficit was nothing like super abnormal. So her speech was not intelligible until 6 years of age. But if you look at all the children, it's not that uncommon that you discover this type of child, one in 100, tens of children, and she was able to kind of recover and catch up in terms of verbal comprehension and expression over the years. And then at the time of the examination, she was evaluated to be pretty much not abnormal, meaning she was tested quite normal in terms of audition and vision and touch sensation and so on. But this is striking in this particular case of the patient, because she doesn't have 80% of the neurons that you would have, but still almost entirely conscious. And nothing in vision or audition or touch seems to be weird. The most striking deficit is the movement and the timing. And in fact, if you have even cancer bilaterally, when you become an adult and then remove it, you can recover it quite a bit. And there was such a case, in fact, in the very famous Japanese singer, like 5-10 years ago. So in summary, 60 billion neurons in cerebellum, 80% of the neurons in our brain do not seem to account for or important for consciousness. And people born without cerebellum can still live normally. And it's unclear, or maybe you would wonder why it's possible, but we need to understand what's going on in the cerebellum and what is the anatomical structure of the cerebellum to understand this. And ideally, we want to have a theory that can explain this phenomenology brain link in the case of the cerebellum subjects. And that's the next topic. Is there any questions so far? Okay, right, I'll move on then. So what is the structure of cerebellum and why it's unnecessary for consciousness? So cerebellum is, in fact, if you look at the anatomical structure of cerebellum, it turns out that it's a series of a parallel computing structure. And it's highly developed in terms of specialization of the computation related to the precise timing control. So in that sense, because of this parallel structure, it is not ideal to integrate information in a broad sense. We will talk more about the integration of information later, but roughly speaking, it's very inefficient in integration. And this feature may explain why it doesn't contribute much to the consciousness. So the entire cerebellum is unlikely to be critical for any aspect of consciousness. And this is not really trivial. And if you think about, let's say, complexity matters for the consciousness, cerebellum is actually quite complicated. 5 times more neurons are there, and it's packed. So it's not easy to say that it's actually the complexity that matters for consciousness. And also cerebellum does lots of prediction and also prediction error. So the prediction and the prediction error is quite central to emergence of consciousness that also doesn't fit. And also cerebellum is highly connected, strongly connected to the prefrontal cortex. So relation to prefrontal cortex also seems to be questioned, or still at least needs to be examined and so on. Okay, so what's happening in the cerebellum? What is the structure and the reason for this unnecessity for consciousness? So this is the anatomical structure of the cerebellum from the side of view here. And then this is from back view, from the back. And then it's you don't need to remember all these and detailed anatomical structure. But one of the things that you might want to pay attention is this highly convoluted and also folded structure. And so this is sometimes described as a hallmark of the cerebellar cortex. But in fact, cerebellum is even more so in terms of the folding. It's folded a lot, and then that's the reason why we can pack 4 times more neurons into smaller part of the brain, like here. Okay. And then the important anatomical feature is this. So one of the most important architecture or computational unit in cerebellum is this important cell called the Purkinje cell, named after the person who the Purkinje. Okay, and the Purkinje cell, if you look from this angle, then it looks like very thin structure. But if you look from the other angle, from this angle, then it shows that it has a gigantic dendrites, the arms that receives the input from other neurons. And each of these dots along the arms or dendrite can be considered as a synapses. So Purkinje cell collects lots of inputs from many other cells across quite a wide range of the space. However, it's pretty thin. And each Purkinje cell doesn't talk directly with another Purkinje cell. Okay, you see? So cerebellum can be considered as a sort of a series of the slice of the computational units, each of which is specialized to do some kind of computation, including prediction and prediction error, for the best control of the timing. And as a result, it doesn't have an integrative kind of circuits. This is another sort of schematic circuit of the cerebellum on the right side. And the left is more anatomically kind of distinguished cerebral circuits in 2D plane. And this is a Purkinje cell with a very complex, dendrite. And as you see, there is a different types of cell like Golgi cells and also granule cells, which is very small, and small molecular layers, and basket cells and the neuroglia cells. So there are at least like 5 to 6 5 types of the cells in there, and then it's connected in a very complicated way, and it generates some significant computational unit. And it can be summarized into this type of diagram. And within each particular type of the sort of the computation unit, it doesn't seem to be less complicated or more complicated than any cerebral cortical microcircuit. However, as so this is a realistic kind of picture of the cerebellum highlighted with lucifer yellow. I think that's a molecular substance to make it clear. Because each of them are organized in a slab-like structure, it doesn't talk each much. And as a result, when you compute or quantify or the effects of the integration or influence from one unit to the other, it's very small. And that is sort of the related to this idea of the integrated information. Each of the module uses this feed-forward computation to make a timing precise, but it doesn't talk much. So that result in a lower level of the integration. And accordingly, according to some theories of consciousness, it may not generate much consciousness. So in summary, 60 billion neurons in cerebellum is not necessary for consciousness, and we need a theoretical and principled explanation. And if integrated information theory of consciousness is correct, then it makes actually sense, because that's our theory predicts that this type of the parallel and non-integrated structure should not be related to consciousness. And other theories needs to also make some kind of a prediction and also explanation about this, but others are a bit less sort of compelling in terms of explanation so far. Okay, so up to now, has there been any? Okay, so there was a question. Can you explain IIT a bit more? Yes. Okay, let's do that. So here, just a brief introduction of the integrated information theory. Okay, so what integrated information means is that in a simple sense, how much loss, how much do you lose by cutting? That's a way to operationalize integrated information. Okay, so in this kind of a structure of the brain, even if you cut it here, then your informational capacity here and here are less affected, right? So in this case, what we call for this integrated information, let's say, if you have a total integrated information of the information of a 40, and then intact version minus cut version was like 40 minus 35, which is 5. And then that's the amount of the information shown here. And the integrated information theory, IIT, starts from an identification of what is important for consciousness. And it starts to suggest that, okay, when you have an experience, it is always different from one to the other. And that part is considered as a sort of the importance of the information, informativeness. Being in any moment of the consciousness is always informative. So consciousness is always correlated with a large amount of information, but also it's always integrated and experienced as one. You can't experience only the left side of the brain, left side of the visual field or right side of the visual field, even if you attempt to, or if you can't really separately experience audition from a vision, or you can't experience only color but not shape and so on. So anytime when you are experiencing anything, it is an experience as a whole. And that's the sort of the unity or integrated aspect of the consciousness. And because of this, properties of consciousness, physical basis or any kind of index that should correlate with the consciousness should reflect these things. And I'm just skipping this information part, but the integration part is the essence here. Like cerebellum is not suited to support such an integrated entity of consciousness. And that's the reason that IIT makes a prediction that cerebellum should not be part of the consciousness. Does it make sense? And I will give a more detailed explanation, sort of, okay, in the later lecture. So let's see if that's helpful. You don't need to understand integrated information theory at this stage. It's just, important thing is to have an empirical evidence to say that if you don't have a cerebellum, you still can be conscious. That's fact, phenomenological fact, and also empirical sort of experimental data, right? And then the second thing is that anatomically, cerebellum is consisted of a series of the independent module. There has to be some kind of theoretical link between why such an anatomical structure does not contribute to consciousness. And one way to link that is integrated information theory, but it's not the only one. With that, is that fine for everybody else? Okay, and yep, all right. Then I think, yeah, we can take a break at this moment. Another 4 or 5 minute break.